Want help to grow your business? Download Bryn, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit bryn.ai or search the App Store today.
Hello and welcome to The Human Element. My name is Nicole Wales. I'm the founder and managing director of Human Tribe and your host for the Human Element series. Today we're here to talk about how to manage your people and have a performance review discussion. So often at Human Tribe, when we're working with businesses that have an employment issue, an employee issue, it boils down to the fact that that employee wasn't managed or potentially held accountable. And often, for whatever reason, those all-important performance discussions didn't take place. So when we talk about our topics today about managing our people and having this performance discussion, it can be a preventative measure to make sure these employee issues don't surface. But it's so much more than that. If you're truly about being a human employer, part of that has to be managing your people, about holding your people to account and getting comfortable with those uncomfortable, sometimes uncomfortable conversations that need to take place. I'm really excited to introduce you to our two guests today, who are both very experienced in the field of human resources. First of all, we have Jodie Payton, the General Manager of People, Performance and Culture at Hoyts. Welcome, Jodie.
Thanks, Nick.
And we have Vanessa Morley, the Group Head of Talent of Coca-Cola Amatil.
Hi.
Welcome to the Human Element, ladies.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, so look, there's a lot to discuss here, and what I'd really like to talk to, remembering that our audience may be business owners or leaders that potentially haven't been managing their people or holding them to account or having those conversations. I'd really like to start with the first step. Well, first we need to answer some key questions before we start having these conversations and start holding people to account. Vanessa, what would you like? I'm going to open up to you first. What would you like to add to that?
Look, I think performance management is such a critical part of having an outstanding organisation and really having an organisation that achieves its goals, but it often stands in its own way. So one of the things I think is really important with performance management is identifying what that problem is for the organisation that you're trying to solve through performance management. What is it that you're trying to achieve as an organisation, and how can you get the best out of your people through using performance management? I think then what it comes down to is being really clear on how prepared are you to actually differentiate between performance. So often we have these systems in place, we go into things with a great intent, but when it comes down to it, we're not really prepared to have a conversation with someone to say, you're not actually performing to the level we want, you're an average performer, you're doing a good job, and you're actually an outstanding performer. We tend to actually feel like it's easier to bring people into the middle. So you've got to ask yourself the question, am I really prepared to have the conversation? Am I really prepared to differentiate between my high performers, my average performers, and my low performers? Because otherwise you might end up finding yourself going through a process for process's sake that actually doesn't deliver any value from a time perspective in the organisation, but certainly no value to the business. So I think knowing that is really important.
Absolutely. Jodie, is there any points that you can add to that?
Yeah, I think that's really true, because having that clarity around, what does success look like, and both from an organisational sense as well as an individual sense, is really important to be able to, kind of start that conversation around what differentiates that great performer from perhaps an average or a low performer. So being armed with that information around what does this look like from our organisation sense, and how do we make sure that everybody's clear on in terms of what that actually looks like, it can give you some more confidence to be able to feel more comfortable around having those conversations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, often when I'm talking to business owners, there's an old saying that I use all the time. It's what you allow is what will continue. And whatever the lowest standard of performance that you are allowing, that is what you are communicating to the business is acceptable,
okay.
whether you like it or not. And I think it comes down to a basic thing as holding people accountable for what at least the minimum standard is.
And I think critically to that is holding leaders accountable for having these conversations. Because it's not actually necessarily about the employee. It's not about the process. It's what have you done as a leader to hold your team accountable, to have the conversations that you need to have at the right time to drive performance. And then are you actually being held to task for having those conversations and for driving the performance of your team. And again, it's not about I tick a box and do a performance appraisal once a year.
Yeah.
It's about the fact I know how to have a conversation with my team, and I know someone's going to ask me what I do as a leader to improve the performance of those people.
What I would love to do is sometimes these terms are interchangeable. So we talk about performance management and we talk about the performance appraisal. If I can put you on the spot, Jodie, if you don't mind, can you describe to our viewers what's the difference between a performance appraisal and then performance management?
Yeah. So I guess, traditionally when you think about a performance appraisal, it's a process around filling out a form and having a very formal conversation, perhaps being rated and giving some feedback and so forth. Performance management, I think, is an ongoing conversation. It's about giving ongoing feedback on a regular basis, so that for those organisations that want to formalise whether it be through an annual or a biannual review process, that you actually have some information that can help you along the way in terms of being able to have a really clear assessment of what that actually looks like. I think from the perspective of performance management, it's really important to ensure that you're kind of continual in that conversation and it's honest. I think the worst thing you can do is get to an appraisal point and there be surprises around what's actually, what the feedback actually is. So I think that performance management allows you, or it should certainly allow you, to be able to be really honest and clear around what that feedback is, so that if you do have that annual review process, it's really about moving forward or development in the organisation rather than looking backwards on what potentially has happened in the past.
Brilliant. So say for right now you've got a business owner that's maybe not doing performance management, which happens out there in small to medium business, right? And sometimes even large business. So when you think about, if you're saying to them, okay, first answer some key questions, what do you start with? What are the one or two things that are the non-negotiables? Where do they need to start?
Again, I think it comes back to what are you trying to achieve through performance management? So what's holding you and your organisation back from being the best it can be?
Okay.
Is there a particular goal that you've set for the organisation that you want to encourage everyone to be involved with? You want to be really clear around the expectations around that.
Yes.
And that can change, obviously, year on year. But what's your organisational goal and how can you use performance management, setting goals, setting objectives to drive that?
Yeah,
Be
got it.
really clear on that. And then I think it's back to that question of, once I've done that, once I'm holding people and I'm setting them goals around these things, how prepared am I to have these conversations?
Yeah, which can sometimes be quite uncomfortable.
That's right. And you might need to think about, what do I need to do for myself to get ready to have those coaching conversations?
Absolutely.
So they're probably the things for me that I think you have to answer. Other things obviously linked to this quite inherently through remuneration, through bonuses, through those kinds of things. But being clear on what you're trying to achieve from an organisational perspective and how you can use performance management to solve that would be the first thing.
And you mentioned setting goals and where you want to go. Where do preferred behaviours come into this conversation that we're having today?
Yeah, I think it's really inherent in terms of how you achieve those organisational goals. I think it's, on one hand, really important to be clear about the metrics or the quantitative aspects of what it is that we're looking to achieve as an organisation. But I think equally important is that qualitative side of it as well, in terms of the way you go about achieving those particular goals. And it really needs to stem back to the organisational values in terms of ensuring that they are the foundation for the way in which you achieve your goals.
Yeah. I think of an example that comes to mind straight away is an organisation that I know that has a brilliant salesperson. Like this person exceeds target month on month, but the behaviour within the organisation and how they deal with their colleagues is really upsetting the apple cart and the culture. And I spoke to the business owner and said, but I don't want to upset them because they're my best salesperson and, everyone else is just going to have to suck it up.
Yeah.
What do you say to business owners in that conundrum where, they're achieving the goals, but it's coming at a behavioural or cultural cost?
Yeah. I think it's the hardest part of performance management, to be honest, and particularly in roles where it is a sales role where you can set some really clear targets around what you need to achieve from a sales perspective. when you're talking about behaviours, measuring them and actually having evidence or data or information around how that person is playing out is always much harder.
Yes.
And it's they are the things that are the most difficult to talk about.
Yes.
It's really easy to say you missed your target.
Yes.
It's really hard to say you got an outstanding target, but the way you did it put our organisation at risk
Yes.
from a behavioural perspective.
Yes.
So I think, particularly in small organisations, when something doesn't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
You've just got to think about how do you have the courage to have that conversation, because ultimately, in my experience, you might get those goals for a while, but it's going to come back at some point.
And like you say, come at a cost.
At a cost.
And
To continue enjoying this presentation, download Bryn, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit bryn.ai or search the App Store today.